said no, so okay. Okay, so my name's Cerys Erwood. I'm a PTY student at Cardiff University. So I'm taking a year out of my degree to do some research, and then I'm going to go back into it next year. And I'm going to talk to you today about what my project is on, give you a little background information, and then talk about how you guys can get involved in it as well. So what's in the soil, essentially? Okay, so within Cardiff University, I work within the CRIPES department, which is Cardiff Research into Infection, Parasites and Ecological Systems. Bit of a mouthful, so we call it CRIPES. Within CRIPES, I work on the BARC project, which is Bag and Remove in Cymru. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about. But first, I thought I'd give you a little background information. So we work on parasites and their effects. And that's what I'm doing as well. So I thought I'd explain about parasites and give you a few interesting examples. So the Oxford Dictionary describes a parasite as any organism which lives in or on its host and benefits by getting food or nutrients at the other's expense. So some examples would be the cuckoo in a really broad sense. And then scientists have estimated that about 50% of organisms in the world are parasites, and that if you were to get rid of them all, the effects would be noticeable before you finish your breakfast. So they're really important, they're wacky, weird and wonderful, and I've got a few examples for you here. Hold on. Okay, so the hookworm on your right there is Nicata americanus, and this looks particularly nasty, but mainly because of its teeth. This hookworm is the New World hookworm, and it gets into your GI tract and causes quite a lot of problems, to put it really briefly. But what's really cool about this hookworm is that scientists are speculating as to whether it can offset allergies. So if you're infected with this hookworm, it might mean you don't suffer hay fever anymore or allergies to pets and cats. But as I said, there's a lot of speculations. We can't say anything definite yet about that one. And then the one in the middle is one of my favourites. So it's Cortesia glomerata. And that's the little yellow larvae right there coming out of the caterpillar. It's also known as the parasitic wasp. So the wasp lays its egg in this caterpillar larvae right there. And then the eggs hatch into larvae, and then they move around within the caterpillar, eating it literally from the inside out, organ by organ, trying to keep it alive for as long as possible. That caterpillar then encases itself in a cocoon in an attempt to protect itself, but actually protecting the larvae as well. And then once they reach maturity, the larvae burst out of the caterpillar. This is what actually inspired the Alien movies in the 1970s. Do you remember those famous scenes? Yeah, inspired by this parasite. And then the one on the far corner there is the parasite I'm looking at. So Toxocara canis and its sister species, Toxocara cati, are really interesting parasites. I'm hoping to sort of let you guys know why they're so important, why they're so interesting. So Toxocara cati and Toxocara canis are globally distributed nematode parasites. Their host species are cats for cati, and dogs, wolves, foxes and coyotes for canis. And what they do, I've got the life cycle here, I will explain a bit more about that later. But these worms produce thousands of eggs per day. And these eggs enter the environment, enter the soil, and stay there for up to 3 years, and still be infectious and still be viable. And that's really cool in terms of parasite eggs, because they're normally quite flimsy. But these are really super strong, super tough outer coating. Can survive for years. And they've got the nematode one emerging from the egg at the bottom. So the life cycle that I explained about. So it can infect cats and dogs in several different ways. Dogs can eat contaminated soil or feces, or they can eat an animal that is infected itself. So that cute little bunny rabbit, really heavily infected, and that infects the dogs. They can also get it from their parents, so from transplacental or lactogenic transmission. And then the dogs get these eggs, the eggs mature into larvae and then to worms. The ones that come from the GI tract produce these eggs. And the eggs mature in the environment and then become worms once ingested. Now I mentioned that the host are cats and dogs, but they can also infect us and cause quite a lot of problems. So once ingested, they cause toxoplasmosis, And we can ingest them by ingesting infected soil, or through eating vegetables that haven't been properly washed, or from coming in contact with infected animals, because there's been some postulation that the eggs can stay in the dog's fur. So that's something we're looking into at BARC at the moment as well. And toxocarasis is a very broad term for this disease, because the outcome depends on how many larvae you've been infected with, what your own immune response is like, and which species you're infected with. So it's got several manifestations, but possibly the most disturbing are ocular larvae migrans and visceral larvae migrans. So ocular has been in the papers quite a bit over the past, because it's linked with blindness in children. And what it does is we ingest the eggs turn into larvae that can't mature because they're not their proper host, we don't know what they want. But the larvae migrate throughout our bodies, which sounds really horrible when you think about it. And they can migrate to different parts, and then they die, and that's when they cause a lot of trouble. They cause an inflammatory response, and that really severely affects us. So ocular larvae migrans is when the larvae migrate to the optic nerve, and then they die, and that's when they cause a problem. So you see in the far corner, you've got that big white gap. That's a granuloma that's caused by death of the larvae. And then the worst case scenario of this is loss of sight, complete loss of sight. And this occurs in children quite a lot. So over 50% of reported cases have occurred in children between 1 and 3 years old. And only a fifth of total cases have been reported in adults. Now most people think it's because children play in the mud quite a lot. I didn't when I was younger, but apparently it's something children do. And they don't wash their hands as much as we do. They put their hands in their mouths a lot more than we do. And this is how they become infected. But toxocarasis is relatively unknown. Not too many people know about it. And part of this is because in most cases it can be asymptomatic. So sometimes you don't know you're infected. In fact, a study in the USA showed that 13.9% of the US adults studied had antibodies for Toxocara, which means they have been infected without knowing. So it's quite scary that we can come so close to this parasite without even knowing. And this is when the BARC project comes in. So bag and remove and covering. What we're trying to do is assess the prevalence of Toxocara in the UK, because this hasn't been done to this scale before. There's been some studies in some cities, but not to this extent. So we assess the prevalence of Toxocara and other parasites, and then we look at their levels in green flag parks, which are parks that have been awarded awards for being completely clean, good, nice parks. But if they've got Toxocara in them, then something has to be done. And we're also going to highlight areas where Toxocara prevalence is highest. So we're trying to do a study where there's a difference between children's play areas and the play areas and the pitches outside them to see if there's a difference. Because people let their dogs go running wild in parks. And as you can see, this is our data set at the moment. It doesn't look like much, but we've got about 400 sites in there. But most of them are clustered about South Wales, which is where I can get to on my car, bike, and whatever. And the red sites indicate sites where we found Toxocara, and when we might find more, we'll investigate it. But the map's looking a bit bare at the moment, and this is where you guys come in. So the project, we use volunteers quite a lot, and it's quite simple. I'm not asking you to do too much. What we need volunteers, and possibly you guys to do, is to collect soil. And it sounds really odd, but it could make a massive impact on the environment. All you need to do is collect about 4 lots of 50 grams, so about a shovelful, and put it in whatever, a sandwich bag, a plastic bag, a dog food bag. I've had crisp packets before. You put it in there and then fill in a really short questionnaire about the site that you got it from, and children's play area. I saw loads of signs indicate, anti-dog fouling. And then you bring it back to us, we analyse it, and we can tell you what was there. So I've had loads of people do their gardens before. I don't know if I would recommend it. I'm certainly not going back in my garden anytime soon. And yeah, that's it. So thanks to my supervisor, Joe Cable, my associates, so Reese, Sarah, and to the companies that are working with us.